Alright, here is our last day on hyperbolas. This lesson is similar to what we did with ellipses, where you have to rewrite the form first. So the steps you're going to find, 1 through 5, are the exact same. You want to get the x's and the y's together. You're going to use parentheses to group them, take out the greatest common factor, complete the square, then factor it down, and get one side to be 1. But what you're going to notice is different here is whatever the positive variable is, that should always go first, because we want to keep this minus sign in between them. The positive variable, whether it's x or y, that should always be what goes on the left and goes first in the equation. So we're just going to go through 2 examples. So looking at example number 1, first thing we're going to do to rewrite this is put the x's together, then we're going to put the y's together, and then that 39 is going to get kicked to the other side, so it becomes negative 39. Then we're going to group them. Out of the first group, we're going to pull out the 4. We're left with x squared plus 8x, and then I can go ahead and put my plus blank to complete the square. But if you look at the second group, this is what's different today, is that minus sign outside means we have to take out a negative. So essentially we're taking out negative 1 from each group. So negative y squared becomes positive y squared. But this is where I need you to be really, really careful, is we have to also divide this by negative 1. So if I divide that by negative 1, that becomes negative 6y. So just be very careful with that step for these hyperbola ones today. And then that's going to be plus blank equal to, I'm out of room, we're going to get negative 39 plus blank on the other side. So then we're just completing the square like we talked about in the ellipse section. So we're going to do 8 divided by 2 squared to get that first blank. That's 4 squared, which is 16. Just be careful with what you're writing over here. That 16 is really being multiplied by 4, so that's going to be 64. And then on the other side, we're going to do negative 6 divided by 2 squared. That's going to be negative 3 squared, which is 9. But on this side, that's 9 times negative 1. We have to multiply by the negative 1 we pulled out, so this is really going to be negative 9. So now if we factor these down, this is 4 times x plus 4 squared. Remember, you're just taking the square root of 16 to get that 4. And then minus y minus 3 squared equal to, and then we just got to calculate that out. That's going to be 16. And then we divide everything by 16 so that we can get it equal to 1 so we can graph it. It's x plus 4 squared over 4 minus y minus 3 squared over 16 equals 1. And then everything else is the same as the process as what we talked about yesterday. The next thing you would want to find is where the center is. The center is going to be x comma y, and we're thinking opposite because we're in parentheses, negative 4 comma 3. That's going to go right there. And then we're making our movements based on the square root of the denominator direction of the numerator. So the first fraction, we would do the square root of 4, which is 2, and the numerator has an x in it, so we're moving left and right 2. So left 2, right 2, that's where my dots are going to go. And then if I move on to the second fraction, that's the square root of 16, which is 4, and y is on the top of that one, so that one's going to go up and down 4. But for the second one, remember, that's where we put the dash. That's what we've been working on all week. So now we can go ahead and create our box. And then we're going to put our asymptotes. Make sure you're going through the corners of that rectangle and through the center. Just make sure you're trying to be accurate there. And then the hyperbola itself is going to go through where we put the dots, because x is the first fraction. It's going to go in the x direction, so this is going to face to the right. Notice I'm hugging those asymptotes, and it's going to face to the left. Okay? And then the very last step is finding our foci. The foci is going to be, zoom out a little bit, c squared equals a squared plus b squared. You're using that new formula. That's 4 plus 16. So c squared equals 20. Take the square root, and I do want you to leave this as a radical, but make it a simplified radical. This is 2 radical 5. And then if we look at what's in control, because the first fraction has x in it, x is in control, so that's going to get added and subtracted to the -4. So it's going to be -4 plus 2 radical 5, comma 3, and then also -4 minus 2 radical 5, comma 3. And we can quickly change those to a decimal. This first one's 0.5 and the second one's -8.5. So the first one's going to go over 0.5 up 3, and the second one's going to go over -8.5 up 3. Notice those are the same distance from the vertices, same distance from the center, but they're inside the hyperbola and outside of the box. Alright, so we're just going to try one more here, and then I'm going to have you try one on Class Kick. So this next one, again, the first step is to get the same variables together, but if you notice what's different here is that it's actually y squared first, so we're going to keep it that way. We're going to put the 9y squared. We want the positive one first. Don't ever try to put the negative one first, or it's not going to get set up the right way. And then we're going to put the x's together next. And then we'll go ahead and kick that 63 to the other side. And then we're going to group these together. That first group, I'm taking out 9. I'd be left with y squared minus 2y. And in the second group, again, this is the part I need you to be careful with, is we've got that negative sign outside. So because we have this negative sign outside, we actually have to take out -4. And if I take out -4, then I'm going to be left with x squared minus 6x equal to 63. And I forgot to put my plus blanks in, so I'm going to do that in this step now. So it's going to be -2y plus blank minus 4 times x squared minus 6x plus blank equal to 63 plus blank plus blank. And then we're just completing the square. In the first group, it's going to be -2 divided by 2 squared, which is -1 squared, which is just 1. But then it's really going to be 9 on the other side, because that 1 gets multiplied by the 9 that was outside the parentheses. And then for the next blank, we're going to do -6 divided by 2 squared. That's -3 squared, which is 9. But in that second blank, I'm going to do -4 times 9, so that's going to be -36 in that second blank. So now if I simplify this down, we have 9 times square root of y is y, minus square root of 1 is 1, 9 minus 1 squared. And then it's going to be -4 times x minus, the square root of 9 is 3 squared, equal to, that side's going to turn into 36. And then I divide everything by 36. I get y minus 1 squared over 4 minus x minus 3 squared over 9 equal to 1. And now we need to find the center. Be careful with this one because this is in reverse order. Make sure when you find the center, just like we did yesterday, you do the x value first, which would be +3, and the y value second, which would be +1. So we're going to go over 3 up 1, and that's the center. And then we're moving the square root of the denominator in the direction of the numerator, so the first denominator is 4, the square root of 4, which it gives us 2. And then y is in the numerator, so we're going to have to go up and down 2, and remember that first one is going to give me where to place, where we place the dot. And then the second fraction has 9 in the denominator, square root of the denominator is 3. X is in the numerator, so that means we're going to go left and right 3. And that's where our dash is going to go. And then we're going to make this rectangular box. And we're going to put in our asymptotes. Again, try to go through the corner and through the center and make your lines nice and straight. And then this one, y was in control because y is first and that's where our dots are. So this one's going to face up and down. So this one's another big wide hyperbola. It likes to get close to that asymptote and be curvy. Okay. And last step is finding the foci. To find the foci, we're using the formula c squared equals a squared plus b squared. That's going to be c squared equals 4 plus 9. So c squared is going to be 13, which means c is the square root of 13. And then in this one, y was that first fraction, so y is in control. So that's going to get added onto the y value of the center. That's 3, 1 plus radical 13. and 3 comma 1 minus radical 13. So the first one is 4.6 as a decimal, and the second one is negative 2.6. So if we graph those, that's over 3 up 4.6, just above that guy, and over 3 down negative 2.6, which is right in here. So they're right where they're supposed to be, in line with those vertices and outside of the box, but inside of the hyperbola. Alright, so you have one to try on Class Kick, and then you have a short homework assignment. I think there's 3 problems on your homework assignment, so not a whole lot to do, just to practice, and then we're going to do an in-class assignment tomorrow to wrap up the week. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.